once the companies, if they cannot compete with each other, then they form an alliance with each other and they just start the business. Strategic planning is ultimately driven by the marketing perception of the strategist. The marketing strategy is based on the business unit strategy, which is also based on the corporate level strategy. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Rate College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. I welcome you all to this session. So in this session, we will be having a competitor analysis. Now, these are the stages in strategic planning. Now, the first two stages we have covered in the previous session, and in this session, we will be having what is known as the competitor analysis. Now, what is competitor analysis? Let us have a look here. So, higher levels and an increasing intensity of competition. So, whenever we have to analyze the competitor, so here we observe that there are higher levels of competition along with an increasing intensity. The intensity of competition has also increased in the current time. Then organizations search for a competitive edge. So whenever an organization is in competition, they try to have a competitive edge over their rival products. Then the pace of innovation is speeding up. Now we can see every day there is the latest technology coming in the market. So we have the latest brand of mobiles, latest brand of automobiles, or latest brand of any gadgets for that matter. So why all this is coming up? Because of innovation. Then strategic alliance becoming more frequent. So once the companies, if they cannot compete with each other, then they form an alliance with each other and they just start the business. So these are the some of the features of competitor analysis. And lastly, the geographical sources of competitions are becoming wider. So the geographical sources of competitions are becoming wider because this competition can be extended all over the world. So wherever the company's products are there, so we can see that competition also has increased. So the rivals of this in this country can be the rivals of in another nation also. So these are the features of competitor analysis. Now, next, the implications of these changes are that the industrial organization needs to have more understanding of who is competing against their capabilities. Now, why should we have competitor analysis? Now, this competitor analysis is essential because the industrial organization needs to know exactly who the enemy is. So, if they know who actually the competitor is, then it will be easy for them to understand, to know how to adjust to the competition or how to fight the competition. So, the competitive analysis can be defined as the set of activities which examine the comparative position of a competing enterprises within a given strategic sector. So, in competitive analysis, we can see that it is a set of activities which examines the comparative position of a competing enterprise within a given strategic sector. So, in competitive analysis, we just examine the position of each of the companies which are in the same sector. So, this is a study of how the companies are faring, the same type of companies are faring in a strategic sector. Then, next, now, the competitor analysis, what does it help us? It helps us to provide an understanding of your competitive advantage or disadvantage relative to your competitor's position. Now, when we have a competitor analysis, so it will help us to know what is our position. So, what is our advantage or what is our disadvantage in relation to the competitor's position. So, whether we are ahead of the competitor or we are running lying behind the competitor. So our exact position can be known when we undergo this competitor analysis. It helps in generating insights into competitor strategies, past, present, and potential. So when we have a competitor analysis, it will know exactly, we will be able to know what are the strategies of the competitor in the past and in the present and in the future also. What are the potential he has and what was he doing in the past, what he is doing in the present, and what he will be doing in the future. So we can have a detailed study of that. Then give an informed basis for developing future strategies to sustain established advantages over the organization's competitors. So give an informed basis for developing future strategies. So we give an informed basis for developing future strategies. With the help of the competitor analysis, we will be able to develop future strategies to sustain or establish advantages over the organization's competitors. So when we identify who the organization's competitors are, then we should be able to draw up a strategic plan so that we can sustain the competition or gain an advantage over the competitor's situation. Then next one is customer analysis. Strategic planning is ultimately driven by the marketing perception of the strategist as to how and why customers behave as they do and how they are likely to respond to various elements of the marketing mix. Now, strategic planning is ultimately driven by the marketing perception of the strategist, that is how the strategist is able to understand the market. So based on that, he will be doing the strategic planning. So he will just analyze the customer. So how will he analyze the customer? So he will just think of why the customer behaves in a particular way and then how they are likely to respond to the marketing mix. So various differences in marketing mix, how the customer will respond. So all this understanding of the customers will help the strategist in strategic planning. So in majority of markets, buyers differ enormously in terms of their buying dynamics. So buyers, they keep on differing enormously. So in respect of their marketing dynamics, that is, so each buyer, so the behavior of the buyer will differ in different markets. So we cannot predict how the buyer will behave. So this is what they are trying to tell here in the customer analysis. Then next one, in industrial markets, differences are exhibited in the goals, criteria employed by those employed in the buying process, the formality of purchasing policies, and the constraints that exist in the form of delivery dates and expected performance levels. Now, in case of industrial consumers or industrial customers as you call, the differences are exhibited in the goals or criteria employed by those involved in the buying process. So, the buying behavior in industry, it depends on the goals and criteria employed by those in the buying process, then the formalities of purchasing policies, so their behavior will be influenced by this, and the constraints that exist in the form of delivery dates and the expected performance levels. So what are the constraints before the industrial buyers? So that is, in the constraints will be in the form of the delivery dates and also the expected performance levels. Then in the customer analysis, the planner has to examine the following details of the customer. Now, what are the things which he has to just think of? The buying roles within the decision-making unit. So, within the decision-making unit, what are the buying roles of the customer? So, that we have to think of. Then, second one is the type of buying behavior. What kind of a buying behavior it is? So that we have to analyze. Then third one is the decision process, actually how they come at the decision of buying. That is the decision process, and the type of purchasing, that is centralized versus decentralized. And lastly, factors influencing the buying behavior. So what are the various factors that influence the buying behavior? So all these we will be learning in customer analysis, or in customer analysis we have an analysis of the entire process of buying. Then in stage 3 we have the strategic directions and strategy formulation. Now what is that strategic direction? So there are 3 steps in strategic direction. First one is the goals and objectives. So this is the first step in strategic direction. Second one is market segmentation, targeting and positioning. So second one is market segmentation, targeting and positioning. Third one is the formulation of strategy. So when we are having a strategy formulation, there are 3 steps. First one is setting up the goals and objectives. Second one is market segmentation, targeting and positioning. And lastly, we have the formulation of strategy. Now, let us see what is about the goals and objectives. So, Lewis Carroll tells us that Alice in Wonderland came up with a maxim along the lines, if you don't know where you are going, any road will do. So that means we should know actually what is our destination. But if we don't know our destination, then the road itself will lead us to the destination. That is, we should know actually, we should be well prepared to what is our destination. But if we don't know our destination, then we may land up in the wrong place. So it is too simple but less than helpful in practical sense. The strategist who says only that our objective is to make as much as profit as possible is merely stating a self-fulfilling prophecy. To be useful, an objective must have a degree of formality. So, whenever we are formulating the goals and objectives of the business, it is essential for us to see that the objectives are fruitful, or the objective must have a degree of formality. So we all know that the business is always done with the objective of earning profits, but then we should have a specific objective in addition to profits. So what is the degree of formality we need when you have an objective? So that should be taken care of when you formulate the goals and objectives of the company. Then, having developed a mission statement, the strategic needs to establish corporate objectives which are typically influenced by several issues. So, once the mission statement has been developed, then the strategic planner, he has to think about the objectives. So, what are the objectives? The objectives are influenced by the following issues. The first one is the nature of the business. Now, what kind of a business it is? So, it may be based on the basis of products, on the basis of markets, or on the basis of technology. So, we can segregate the nature of business. Then, second one is external factors. So, the goals and objectives should be based on the external factors. So, that is the societal values, pressure groups, government and legislation. So there are certain factors which affect the business environment. So these factors related to the societal values. So what are the social values that the society holds? The second one is the pressure groups. Now, who is putting pressure on the business environment? Then the government and legislation, they all comprise of the external factors. Then third one is organization culture. So what is the actual culture of the organization? And lastly, individuals and groups within the organization. So what are the individuals and groups within the organization? So they all, based on all these issues, we have to formulate the goals and objectives of the company. So having identified the objectives, the strategist must ensure the 4 most significant criteria are satisfied. So once the objectives are formulated, now we have to think about the objectives satisfy the 4 criteria. What are the criteria? The objectives are hierarchically arranged. So what is this hierarchically arranged? So objectives, whatever is to be achieved first, that should be first. The priority basis will go first, and then the less priority ones and the less important ones. So in this manner, we have to arrange the objectives. Then they are quantitatively expressed. So objectives should always be expressed in quantitative terms. Then next one is objectives are realistic. So we should always have realistic objectives, and they have internal consistency. That is, whatever objectives are set, they should be consistent to the organization. So once this has been done, and then it becomes possible to begin the process of developing strategies that are to be used to achieve the agreed objectives. So once the objectives are set, then we can develop the strategies that are to be used to achieve the objectives. The first one is you have to define the mission of the organization. Then second stage in strategic planning is you have a competitor analysis. Now in this competitor analysis, we again have the competitive analysis, and then we have the customer analysis, and in the third stage we are having the strategy formulation. In strategy formulation, the first step is having the goals and objectives of the organization. Then second one is market segmentation, targeting and positioning. A well-developed strategy of market segmentation, targeting and positioning contributes to effective marketing planning. So a market segmentation, targeting and position, it contributes to effective marketing planning. A single product or marketing approach cannot appeal to the needs and wants of a group of potential customers. So a single product or a marketing approach, it cannot appeal to the needs of the group of potential customers. So strategist needs to categorize buyers on the basis of both macro and micro variables. So the strategy should be formulated so that it caters to the needs of the micro and the macro customers. So there are certain customers who need customized products, and there are other customers who can manage with any product. So the strategy should see that it caters to the needs of both the micro customers as well as the macro customers. So having segmented the market, the strategy should be able to position to identify those segments from the organization's point of view represents the most attractive targets. So once the market has been segmented, the strategist should be in a position to identify those segments which are very, very attractive, or those segments which give in more profits. So we should be able to identify those segments. Then next one is in deciding where to focus the marketing effort. So the marketing strategist needs to give consideration to the elements. Now he has to give consideration to the following elements. The first one is the size and growth potential of each segment. Now in the market segment, we have to think about the size and growth of each of the segment. Then second one is the structural attractiveness of different segments. So how each segment is different and how each segment is attractive, and then the organization's objectives and resources. So what is the objective of the organization and what are the resources of the organization? All this we have to think of. Then next, market segmentation, targeting and positioning. So once a decision has been made on the breadth of market coverage, the strategist then has to consider how best to position the organization, the product range and the brand within each target segment. A number of guidelines for target positioning. So once he knows what is the market coverage of the organization, then he has to consider how best to position the market. So what is the best time to just have the market for the product, and then the product range and the brand within each target. So all this has to be decided by the strategist. A well-conceived and properly implemented strategy of segmentation, targeting and positioning can contribute to a truly effective marketing program. So, a well conceived and properly implemented strategy, so it will help us in having an effective marketing program. Then the formulation of strategy. So even though we are concerned with formulating a marketing strategy, it needs to be recognized that these strategies are dependent on business unit plans, which in turn depend on the corporate strategies. So when we are formulating the market strategy, it needs to be recognized that these strategies are dependent on business unit plans. So whatever strategy we do, so they are dependent on the business unit plans, which are in turn dependent on the corporate strategies. Then at the corporate level, the decisions made are concerned principally with corporate strategic plans and how best to develop the long-term profile of the business. So we have to think about the marketing strategy. So while thinking about the marketing strategy, these strategies are dependent on the business unit plans, which are in turn dependent on the corporate strategy. So while formulating the marketing strategy, we have to first check what is the business unit plan, which are in turn dependent on the corporate strategy. Now, at the corporate level, the decisions made are principally with the corporate strategic plans and how best to develop the long-term profile of the business. So, in the corporate level plans, we can see that these plans are made for the long-term profile of the business. So, how the business has to run in the long term. So, based on that, they will be formulating the corporate level strategic plans. Then, this in turn involves a series of decisions on levels of resource allocation to individual business units according to the business unit strategies. So, in this formulation of strategy, we should understand that the marketing strategy is based on the business unit strategy, which is also based on the corporate level strategy. Now, when the corporate level strategies are formulated, we can see that this corporate level strategies, they are based on a series of decisions on the levels of resource allocation. So, what is the level of resource allocation to individual business units and according to the business unit strategies. Now, it is now apparent that corporate strategies need to be developed first. So, whatever are there, the corporate level strategies, they have to be first developed, because in the corporate level strategy itself, we will be making an allocation of the resources to the individual business units, and based on the strategic plans of the individual business units, the strategy will be developed, the marketing strategy will be developed. So, we should understand that the corporate strategies are to be first developed. Based on that, the business level strategy will be developed, and based on the business level strategy, we have the functional level of strategy. Now, let us look into how the formulation of strategy is done. So, there are 4 dimensions for strategic planning. The first one is definition of the business mission. So, we have to first define the business mission. The second one is establishing company's strategic business units. So, for then we have to establish the company's strategic business units. Then third one is evaluating existing business portfolio. So, then we evaluate the existing business portfolio, and lastly identifying new areas for the business to enter. So, what are the various areas where the business can enter, or where are the new markets that the business has to search for? So, based on these 4 dimensions of planning, we can have the formulation of strategy. Then, the business mission is already dealt with in the stage of strategic planning process. Once this is done, the strategist then is in a position to move on and identify the organization's strategic business unit. So once you decide on the business mission, then will be easy. So then we will be able to identify the organization's strategic business unit. So many large companies have served businesses which can be defined in terms of customers, product, market and technology. So there are large number of companies which have several businesses which can be defined. The businesses can be defined in terms of the customers, in terms of the product, in terms of the market and in terms of the technology. So with this, we come to the end of this session on stages of strategic planning. Hope you have all followed it. Thank you.